Hello and welcome to this week's Roundup by blockchaingamer.biz, your source of the most relevant news in blockchain games. Today is Friday, the 16th of June, and I'm your host, Jenny Jordan, and with me today is my co-host, John Jordan. Hi, John.
Hello, co-host Jenny. How are you?
Did I say co-host Jenny?
No, you said co-host John.
Right.
That's right.
So, just to begin, you can find all of our articles on blockchaingamer.biz, and you can follow us on Twitter to stay up to date with all of our updates on BCG.biz. And we're going to dive straight into talking about some actual blockchain games this week. I'm going to hand it over to you, John, to talk a little bit about our game of the week, which is Eternal Paradox.
Yeah, and I guess a little bit of background. So one of the reasons we like to do like a game of the week is not necessarily to say this game is like the best game out there, but it's sort of to highlight that, all the time now we're seeing a lot of sort of new games come out, and some of them are sort of coming out sort of proper launches. Some of them are a bit more like open betas. We don't normally cover something in a game of the week that's sort of a closed alpha or closed beta, but there's a lot of stuff going on. So just with that proviso, Eternal Paradox is a game from Gala Games, and Gala Games is sort of, I think, I mean, maybe you know better than me how many games they've got on there, how many games they've got announced. Is it a dozen? Is it more than that? I can't remember. Something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think? Something like that. I asked Jenny because Jenny runs the big games list, so the big blockchain games list, so she often has better views on the numbers than me. But they have a bunch of games anyway, quite a lot in development still, not so much live, but we are starting to see a whole bunch of their games becoming available in sort of playable form. And in the case of Eternal Paradox, it is they're a week into a 3-week sort of they've not really called it, I guess I would call it an open beta. They've not really called it that, but it's they're doing some testing, so it's not sort of feature complete, and it looks a bit light on the NFT stuff, but it's anyone can download it. So you just basically have to have a Gala Games account, which is just email password. Then you can download the APK, the Android file, download it onto an Android phone, and install it. And that process works pretty well. It's in terms of the game, I think, as with a lot of Gala's games, it was originally just a Web 2 game that Gala sort of acquired from the developer, and then they spent the next year adding blockchain to it. So I think that's sort of Gala's approach, as far as I can tell. There's a few games that they're launching with it.
It's basically going into games that would have been published anyway, but in Web 2 form, and they have basically just added the sort of blockchain aspect to it. Yeah,
and obviously the advantage of that is you have a game that's sort of the game's sort of finished, so you can see how good it is. You can choose games you like, and they're sort of appealing games for normal gamers. Obviously, the disadvantage is you can't do as deep integration as Web 3 as you would do if you were starting from scratch. So that's the sort of a balance. But for Gala, Gala is not a super hardcore, fully on-chain sort of company. It's a mass market, get everyone into these games. So that makes sense. So in terms of the actual game, finally get there. It is it's an interesting hybrid. So it's free to play mobile, and it has this RPG, like a squad RPG element, which we've seen in loads of games. I guess Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes is still the most famous of those, where you sort of have these characters, and you put, in this case, 4 of them in a squad, and you go around defeating enemies. There's a bit of a narrative around that. And as you go play through the missions, you get more of these characters. They're called mercenaries, and you sort of have to gear them up. So you're crafting gear, and then you're leveling up the gear, and then you're leveling up the characters, and they have the whole elemental thing of their different sort of power-ups and their different attributes and skills, and you sort of choose sort of which ones you want to sort of focus on. So there's that sort of element, and then there's also plays into a 4x sort of strategy element, and that's sort of you have a base, so it's a preset base, and you're basically unlocking buildings and then leveling up buildings and getting resources and leveling up more buildings, and then doing crafting of the gear for your mercenaries. And then there's the 4x map, where basically you come out of your city, and you see your city as a little sort of like a Google map view, and you see all the other players' kingdoms around you, and you can go and attack them and steal their resources, or there's some sort of NPC monsters you can go and attack as well, and there's some stuff you can mine. So sort of
it sounds like it's quite busy. I mean, I get quite confused by strategy games as they are, sort of basic ones, because I think there's so much going on and so much to keep in mind. It's and it's so. Is it like that, or?
So I would say the advantage here, if you viewed this as a squad-based RPG, or if you viewed this as a 4X game, so the two components that have been combined, you would find it a very lightweight experience. So, a proper squad RPG has dozens and dozens of characters and really deep sort of gear enhancement systems, and it's just and lots of sort of PVE, playing against other sort of AIs, and then playing loads of PvP where you're playing your characters against other characters, which you can't do in this game. So it's the point of having a hybrid game is what you're trying to do is you're trying to take the best bits of those genres, sort of combine them in an interesting way, but not have the sort of depth that you would need if they were just a single format game. And particularly 4X games are notorious for, as you say, being absolutely incomprehensible to normal players. They're really quite boring to look at graphically, and they're all about resource management. And they mainly have a lot of guild play, so you sort of have to play as part of a group. And those games sort of have been successful, but at the moment, mainly for marketing reasons, you can't really market to those target audiences anymore. So it's what people are trying to sort of combine and hybridize all this sort of stuff. So I think actually if you got into it, you would. It's actually fairly straightforward, I think, to go through. I've played a lot of those games, but I'm not an expert certainly. It was fairly straightforward to get into at least the first sort of week of play. So I think they have sort of hit a sweet spot in terms of that game design. The thing that wasn't very clear was the NFT side of things. So you can own land, and it looks like you can mint the land from within the app. So that would be sort of interesting. I guess they would do that if they're going through the Apple App Store. They would do that by you're minting the land as an in-app purchase, because that's what Apple want people to do. And it looks like there are some other NFTs you can sort of have in the game. As far as I can see, the NFT stuff, I'm not sure. I was reading some of the notes on it, and it looks like it may be functional. They were talking about they have existing NFTs for this game, which can't be used at the moment, but sort of could be. So it looks like they're sort of you may be able to get some NFTs. The other thing, if you play the game a lot now, they were a week in, so it's pretty late. They have a leaderboard, and they're giving away a whole bunch of resources and content and stuff for people who place high on the leaderboard for playing this game now. So I thought it was. I don't want to overplay it and say it's the best game ever, but I was sort of pleasantly surprised.
The best one of the Gala games you've played so far.
Yeah, I played a few Gala games. So we did Dirt, didn't we, a while ago? That sort of Grit. Sorry, and that was. I think that was less compelling as a game. It was functionally it was okay, but it's a battle royale cowboy game. I think they're going to struggle to get people into that. Played Spider Tanks. That was one of their first ones, which was sort of quirky, but. It was basically a tank shooter game, but the tanks were sort of bot spiders.
Superior, you played.
Superior, yeah. Again, that was a sort of existing PC shooter game. I quite like actually that as a game, sort of extraction shooter type thing. Again, not quite sure where the NFTs fit into that. So I think that's probably, without making this all about Gala, I think that's sort of Gala's. Every business tends to have a strength and a weakness, and that's fine to have. It's fine to have a weakness if you think your strength is so superior that is that's the point. And Gala is definitely all about mass market. So Gala's sort of gig is people don't care about complicated wallets and crypto tokens and all this sort of stuff. They just want to play great games, which I think a lot of people would agree with. So they've basically raised a bunch of money through their token and bought a lot of existing games that were already being made and were just going to be normal, Web 2 games.
Sorry to interrupt. They got 16 games that we are listing. There's probably more than that on the games store. Battlestar Galactica and Champions Arena is set to come out this year. Quite a few of them I think are going to have at least play tests and stuff come out. Walking Dead Empires and Townstar. You mentioned Townstar. Townstar's been their longest running game. That was their sort of launch game like 4 years ago. They have this Meow match one as well, which has been a bit of. Well, they bought, didn't they? They bought a mobile game developer. So those existing mobile games that were launched as Web 2 games, they're going to sort of retrospectively fit NFTs mainly. So, and I think that the strength is they've made sort of decent quality games that normal gamers will just go, oh yeah, this is an alright sort of game. I guess the weakness would be, are those games actually good enough?
because if they were sort of super duper games, then the developer would just go, I don't want NFTs in them. They're just really good games. I'm going to make tons of money just by doing it like a normal game. I don't need the complexity. So there's a slight view that they're certainly not AAA games, but are they like AA or single A games in terms of just the maybe not for me to judge on that. And the problem in general is there's so many games out there. Just there is developers are making far too many games. There's more games than there are gamers. So it's very hard to get a game launched anyway. So given that's the fact, is the NFT side of things going to be enough to sort of provide this sort of viral marketing loop that people go, I wouldn't have played this game. It's all right, but it didn't really appeal to me. But NFTs have given me something new. So whether that's going to be the case or not, I mean, I'm a bit more of a blockchain sort of purist on these things, and I so maybe that's where I would.
Well, we're starting to emerge, I think, to some extent in the blockchain gaming industry. It's like different categories almost of how integrated blockchain aspect is in the games. Is it going to be a mobile first game, and then you can go and get NFTs on the side of things, sort of thing, or is it fully on chain? That's going to be quite a dividing kind of line, don't you think? And then whether the blockchain games or not is not really relevant anymore, but where are they on the sort of blockchain integration scale?
On the spectrum. No, I absolutely agree. And we talk about this quite a lot. I personally am really, from an intellectual point of view, I love the on-chain games. I mean, they're just really intellectually, and I was chatting to one of the guys I know who's making one, and he's just, every time I talk to him, he's like more into like, oh, amazing, fully on-chain, autonomous, everyone can build on it. He's really down that rabbit hole, and I'm really fascinated to play that game. But clearly, those are not mass market games. So those are games where
well, intellectually, that's sort of the disruptive kind of power of blockchain, isn't it?
But you're not going to have 1 million people playing those games. I mean, that's not where we are at the moment. So that's sort of the issue. And so for the mass market, for a company who knows that, then that's sort of playing in the long game. It's going to take us 5 years. We're going to heavily monetize the few players we have. That's a different sort of model. Whereas the sort of the Galas and maybe the Axes who, do want to have millions of players. I think they're increasingly, for game design perspective and also for regulation stuff now, the SEC obviously clamping down on stuff like tokens. They're moving to an increasingly lightweight integration of NFTs where you might have, and it's I don't think we spoke about this last week, but EA did this deal with Nike for like customized shoes basically. Yeah. And we'll see those appearing in EA Sports games, but they'll have no gameplay, feature. No. Your character, you might buy a $20 sneakers and see your character wearing them in the game, and that's sort of the level of, and I think that there's nothing wrong with that at all. That is a use of blockchain that actually we're very sort of quite hard to do without blockchain. Doing that across all EA sports games, and of course maybe other sports games could also do that if they do a deal with Nike. But that's not, for me, that's not intellectually what's interesting about the sector, and that's probably the first steps of education. And maybe I'm much too sort of purist about these things and expect everyone to fall in love and create a MetaMask wallet today. Clearly that hasn't happened over the last 5 years.
Well, a lot of people wouldn't even have understood, or got this idea yet, would they? Anyway, some people who have got the idea of it are Mavens, and we had an article, a feature this week, with them talking about using the app stores as a key distribution channel for blockchain games, and very sort of wide, nothing too radical, but quite a wide range of views on that there, from Tony Pierce, Reality Plus, Robbie Young, Animaka Brands, and Susan Cummings, Petaverse, and Nicholas Kilo from Ultra. So go and check that out on our website. It's definitely worth a read. Yeah, it was good though, and I think it did show that there are some people like, Tony Pierce. They released their first blockchain game through the Apple stores like in 2019, 2020. I mean, it wasn't a great success, but technically it also worked, and you could have, bring NFTs in, and I think Petaverse has this, AR cat. I mean, that's the whole thing about their pet thing, is that you have an AR app on your phone. Do that, actually. Can we somehow have our pets here with us.
They had it on
if you
use, I think they had a Twitch integration, didn't they? If you were doing this on Twitch, if you were doing a Twitch stream, you could. I think you have your cat in there.
Look into that.
Yeah,
maybe somebody can. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I say, I think a lot of these companies are on a spectrum where some people are just like, as we've mentioned, increasingly now, like Mythical Games with NFT NFL Rivals, which is a game you play a lot. It's a mobile game. They're saying they've almost done 1 million downloads now. We had the first launch last week of their what's it called, Nitro Nations car NFTs. That will be another game through the App Store. It's a mobile game through the App Store. That's always how it's been designed. If Apple change the rules, they'll have to change their game design because they've designed that game to go through the App Stores. There's no other way of doing it. Whereas other people are just like, well, we'll do a web game, or maybe we'll do, if Apple, we won't rely on Apple for our distribution, and other companies are 100% relying on Apple. And I say there's no right or wrong in that, we'll see how it all plays out.
These legendary heroes Unchained are going to have their closed playtest this weekend.
Yeah, and they're another
mobile.
I'm not sure actually. I think I think they're tested in browser, but they again are another mobile game development team. That was what they were. They're a free-to-play mobile developer. So I don't think they're going to be. I mean, they could technically make a PC game, but I think that's going to be through the app stores. And that's partly because they know the experience. They won't have. To be fair to these people, they will have spoken to Apple. Before releasing a game, these people have had been making games on the App Store for 10 years. They know people at Apple. They will have said, "This is what we want to do," and Apple will have said, "This bit's fine, this bit's not fine," and they would have gone back to Apple and said, "Okay, we've changed it, it's this," and Apple would have said, "Okay, that looks fine." And we would obviously have to they'll have to actually see the actual game and decide it's fine. But it's not like people are submitting games to the App Store with no idea whether they're going to pass or not. I mean, Apple talks a lot, they talk to developers all the time. So,
are you going to play the game, Legendary Heroes Unchained?
Yeah. I played a bit of Legendary Heroes when it first came out. I mean, that was literally probably 10 years ago. It's pretty hardcore. Sort of RPG, but yeah, I mean, I have one of their past NFTs, so I could technically play the
Synergy Land, another one by Spanish game studio Synergy Games, an RPG. They're also having a playtest, an open playtest this weekend.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That one, yeah, I've spoken to them. PC game, pretty. Sort of the opposite of what we talked about with mobile. Yes, it's sort of fully sort of RPG, MMORPG sort of world. So pretty heavy, big sort of content. Quite a big sort of project. Not quite sure what stage they're at yet. Probably quite a way off sort of launching, I would think. But when I looked at, they had a playable sort of demo. It looks nice and looks sort of functional. So these are sort of like combat crafting sort of stuff going on there. So,
yeah. Okay. Good. We had an article up this week as well with Yat Siu talking about the SEC and what's been going on there with the sandbox, sand being labelled as a security, and him sort of again being more bullish on the Asian kind of market and just not. He just doesn't seem to be sort of shocked by anything or really surprised. But when you had an interview with him, didn't you? End of last year.
Start of the year.
Yeah. And already then you could sort of sense that he's not super hyped by the West and our approach to crypto compared to
No, this is a theme. This is a theme he's been on for a while, and they're based in Hong Kong, so he's very close to the sort of, I wouldn't say close to the Hong Kong authorities, but I think he is a prominent businessman in Hong Kong and has been for 20 years. He was one of the people who bought his first company was bringing the internet to Hong Kong when it was run by the British. So he's gone through various cycles. He again, when they were very early. Animoca were very early to the App Store, and they had like 10 of the top 100 top grossing games, I think, at one point. And then one day, literally, Apple kicked them all off the App Store. So he knows all about censorship from that point of view. He knows all about platform holders exercising ban hammers. That was part of the reason he got into blockchain. Was he literally, his entire business was destroyed by Apple. He said he didn't even get an email from them. He said just literally overnight, all his apps gone. They had no contact with them, and he said it took years to get back in there. And obviously, by that stage, they'd lost the advantage. So he's a very robust character, and he's learned to be pretty independent. And equally, at the moment in Hong Kong is now, it's interesting how it play out. Hong Kong is clearly being given license to be very crypto friendly and attract crypto companies from Asia. I don't think we'll see any American companies going over there. It's interesting that the UK now seems to be a bit more positioned. So A16Z, the big tech investor, crypto investor, has opening an office in London. Coinbase were in London. I'm not sure they're going to open a big office there, but it's, you're starting to see the pressure of this you see in America is sort of moving people out into other areas, and other areas are trying to take advantage of that. So.
Yeah. I just thought it would be good to end on that note, as sort of a bit of a positive and encouraging note, rather than
you can't ban crypto.
On all the news that's going on in the West.
No, but you can't. I mean, it's kind of funny. The SEC will find out. That I think either technology and innovation is going to happen. It's sort of just whether you want it. If you don't let your citizens do it in your country, they'll go somewhere else and do it, and you won't gain the sort of tax rewards and
but it's good. It's almost like he's empowered by challenges, and he just grows stronger through them, and that's really good sort of character. And anyway, with that we're going to close, because you are going to have to head off. But thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Bye bye.
Goodbye.